Okay, so we just finished covering the failure of the Austerity Joe smear, and you can watch that if you haven't already, or if you're on the podcast, don't rewind it, continue listening. Okay, we have great shows still. But we still need to discuss the public option. And frankly, I know I'll get some pushback. People will say, well, you actually love Joe Biden. You are too positive with Joe Biden. You need to be pushing Joe Biden left. Frankly, I understand that, which is why in a previous show, I did cover Joe Biden skipping the public option this time around. Now, I'm not going to say that Joe Biden has abandoned the public option. I don't think he has, frankly. But Joe Biden has not put the public option in this new budget, which is a problem. And we discussed that in the last show. So go ahead and watch that if you haven't. I think it's a second segment. I didn't post it on YouTube because I didn't post any of that show on YouTube. Not because I didn't stand by it. It's a great show. In fact, go and watch it right now. Or not, actually. Finish this episode and then go and watch it. Even if you already watch it, frankly. That's my homework for you. Go and watch it. But we already covered that. And I will instead cover positive news about the public option. And it comes from a state that you may not have heard of, frankly. You don't even know if the state exists. It's called Nevada. Some people say Nevada. They're wrong. The Spanish said Sierra Nevada. So I will say Nevada. But however you pronounce it, Nevada is pushing its own public option. And to be fair, this public option is not the one that Joe Biden promised. It's not the one that Pete Buttigieg promised in 2020. However, it is considered a public option by the state legislature who is trying to pass it. And this public option sort of works differently, as I mentioned, than other public options. To be very clear, Nevadans who sort of buy into this public option, they actually aren't buying their insurance from the state, which is generally how a public option works. The public option tends to be that there is a state insurance plan that is basically available to anyone, and people can buy into that public plan, while there are some who maybe make more money than those who buy into the public plan who can buy from private insurers. Now, this public option actually, instead of having the state create its own insurance plan, the state is forcing private insurance companies to create their own insurance plans with lower premiums. And for those who don't know, a premium is what you buy to get health insurance, just to be very clear. Anyway, a healthcare premium would be 15% lower in 2030 if this plan was passed. Now, some would argue that that is probably too far in the future and probably too little. However, it must be noted that this plan is kind of bare bones at the moment, and although it seems like it will pass, it's not necessarily obvious how it's going to work, and how this will actually help, other than lowering insurance costs and probably lower Nevada's uninsured rate, which is one of the highest in the nation at 11.5%. And even among Hispanics, it's at 22%, making it an extremely difficult state to get health insurance in for a variety of different people, primarily those who are underprivileged. Okay, so let's keep talking Nevada, because that wasn't the only important thing that happened during the legislative session. So Nevada also claimed that it should be the first 2024 primary state, passing a bill to make it the first 2024 primary state. To be clear, that is not necessarily without controversy. New Hampshire, who is the first primary state, of course Iowa is the first caucus state, but New Hampshire is the first primary state. They are not happy with Nevada doing this, because now both of these states are the first primary state. So that is an issue. Not only that, so first, it is important to say that Nevada probably has a better shot of being the first primary state. It is more diverse, not only in terms of race, of course, race definitely, but in terms of class as well. And not only that, there is a new progressive push in Nevada. So, for instance, progressives right now have a lot of momentum in Nevada. And the reason why is because there was a recent election in Nevada around the Nevada Democratic Party, and the progressives pushed out a lot of the Harry Reid establishment. Harry Reid was, of course, the Democratic Senate minority leader for a very long time, and he was the senator of Nevada in 2017. He had to leave. I forget why. I think he had I think it may have been brain cancer. He had something, and he had to leave for that reason. But he still has some control, or at least the establishment in Nevada is still connected to the Reid establishment. And Harry Reid is a moderate Democrat, so progressives are actually now beginning to overtake the Reid establishment inside the Nevada Democratic Party. So there are interesting things occurring in Nevada, and we'll definitely have to take a look at that in the future because it's going to become even more important in the 2024 primaries. So not only that, you have the death penalty, which actually was supposed to be banned in Nevada. We'll talk later in the show about what happened in Arizona with the death penalty. But in Nevada, the death penalty actually is not being abolished. And that is primarily due to Sisolak himself, who actually he opposes the death penalty in most cases, but he actually does believe that death penalty should still be an option for things like mass shootings or terrorism. Of course, Nevada being impacted by a major mass shooting, I believe in 2017 in Las Vegas. So perhaps there are some questions about what's happening in Nevada with the death penalty. There are a few other things that occurred. For instance, there was a plan to ban natural gas. And it seems as if that's not necessarily occurring at the moment. Sisolak had his climate initiative in Nevada, and instead of passing a natural gas ban, they're going to instead look at the idea, which that definitely does not bode well for the natural gas ban. Perhaps if you like or dislike that idea, you may be annoyed or not annoyed by that. There are other different bans that were considered. The non-functional turf ban to hopefully save water. However, that may or may not happen. And finally, these innovation zones that were a major scare in left-wing media, because these innovation zones had like corporate control, supposedly. That's not going to happen. At least not even the Republicans support it. So we will look at that in the future. Of course, we will have to look at Nevada closely over the next year because it's going to be important due to the 2022 midterms. Follow me on @RealRaymondPerez on Instagram or @RealRPerez on Twitter for more political content. Those links are in the description, or simply go to linktr.ee/RaymondPerez. We will talk about Dr. Anthony Fauci after this.